Welcome to our weekly edition of Biz Bites here on WMAY at 92.7, 94.7, and 970 AM. And with us right now is Michelle Ownbey from the Springfield Business Journal. Hey, Michelle, good afternoon to you. And number one, the wardrobe is up for sale again. And what Kim Dixon is ready to retire again. I guess 2020 would bring that out in a lot of us, huh?
Right. I know, the feed store owners and a number of other folks have decided this is a good time as any to retire. And yes, you may recall a few years back, almost 3 years ago exactly, Kim had announced plans to retire. That was when she sold the building at MacArthur and South Grand to Michelle Chumlin, who has District 23. But then a few months later, she had announced that she was actually going to go ahead and reopen in the Gables. So she's been operating there for the last few years and says now that she hopes that will make it a little bit easier transition for a new owner to come in now that they wouldn't have to worry about a move on top of everything else.
Does she have anybody on staff that might want to take over?
She mentioned she had an employee that had expressed interest, but that employee is now going to be moving out of state due to her husband's job. So that fell through.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. Hopefully she can find somebody here because we could always use, those high-end clothing stores are always fun.
Yeah, they've been around since 1963, so they've got a long history in Springfield, and I'm sure Kim would like to see the tradition continue.
Absolutely. All right, let's get over to a building that has had a lot of lives. The last life was an archery place, and now it looks like it's going to be a pest control center.
Yes, kind of a unique use in both cases, but Adams Pest Control, they've been located there on MacArthur for about a decade now. It's one of those little brick bungalow former houses that's been converted to an office, which in chatting with owner Sonny Adams, he says that's sort of part of the problem. It's not necessarily the most efficient use of space. And of course, they have work trucks and things that the employees have to take home with them because there's just not enough space to store them at the location. And Sonny's gone through a few different plans before settling on the archery building that you mentioned. He said he had looked at another property on MacArthur that ended up getting torn down. Even looked at doing some new construction out in Sherman, but that didn't pan out. And so now he has the former Springfield Archery right next to Knights Action Park under contract. It'll close in a few weeks, and then after some extensive remodeling, he hopes to be in after the first of the year.
What's really interesting about that building is, if I'm not mistaken, it started out as a reception hall, didn't it? Camelot Reception, and then the archery, and then now a pest control place?
I think you're right. Yeah, it's had a few different creative uses over the years, and I believe it's still got the archery logo on the side of the roof. So I assume that will be modified somewhere in the remodeling process. But it's a very distinctive building. It
was really funny because as I was riding around today, I noticed that archery sign on the roof was torn. I think the windstorm just last got it, and it's perfect timing for Sonny and the guys.
Yes, they have big plans already for overhauling the property, and it could probably use a little freshening up. So good for them.
Well, it's been a crazy time, of course, with what's going on with the restaurants and not having any dining and things like that. Michelle, some of the restaurants that I've talked to have seen business down about 60%, and they're reluctantly closing, and they're kind of upset about what's going on. What's the mood that you've heard from your restaurant owners that have talked to you?
Yeah, similar feedback. I know a lot of restaurants feel like they're being singled out. We've seen the surveys and the statistics where people who test positive for COVID often report that they've been in bars or restaurants recently, but it can be a little hard to know how to interpret that. Does that just mean that those are people that are more likely to be out and about in general? Presumably the people that are hunkering down and have been since March are less likely to test positive for COVID for a variety of reasons. So one of those correlation may not imply causation kind of things, but the restaurants and even other small retailers for that matter are understandably very frustrated because even the ones that are allowed to operate, there's just not as much foot traffic, not as many people wanting to get out of their homes and patronize the local businesses. And now we're going into the winter, which is going to make things even harder for a lot of folks.
Yeah, they certainly need a lot of help, and help is on the way, courtesy of the city of Springfield. They've started accepting applications on Monday for a small business assistant grant program. This comes at a perfect time, obviously, Michelle, and I think there are a lot of businesses that could be in line for a $5,000 or more grant.
Yeah, and the announcement was made quite some time ago that the city was going to have funds available. You may recall, I think over the summer, they had announced funding for the rental assistance program, and that they were also going to use a portion of that federal money they received to help small businesses. But it's taken a little time to get the protocols in place, perhaps a little more complex than the rental assistance program. But really the criteria that they came up with is pretty straightforward. You have to be located, of course, within the city limits of Springfield, 50 or fewer employees. Nonprofits are not eligible. Certain types of businesses, like those related to gambling or marijuana, are not eligible. But other than that, it's fairly wide open. So the vast majority of businesses that have fewer than 50 employees are going to qualify. The catch, of course, is there's only a certain amount of money to go around. They're using $200,000 of that federal CARES Act money. The rest was used for rental assistance. And then they also received some money from the state, from Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, another $400,000 of COVID relief funds. So altogether about $600,000. And if I'm doing the math right, the grants are $5,000 apiece. So that means about 120 businesses are going to be able to receive those small grants. And they just started taking applications on Monday of this week.
Yeah, it's really badly needed relief, and unfortunately only 120 businesses, because I think there'll probably be a few more than that are going to need that help. But it does come at a good time right now, and as they look ahead to 2021, this is probably going to be a big chunk of what's going to get these restaurants especially through this tough time.
Yeah, if they can get them through the winter. I mean, we've been hearing some promising news about a vaccine and all that, but logistically, even if the vaccine was available tomorrow, it would still take a while to get it distributed and all of that. So definitely need to be able to make it through the winter, I think.
Look, we'll keep our fingers crossed for all of that. And of course, Biz Bites is a great way to find out about what's going on in Springfield and the community. So Michelle, how can people get Biz Bites in the Springfield Business Journal?
You can just go to our website, springfieldbusinessjournal.com, to get signed up for our weekly newsletter, Biz Bites, which is a roundup of what's happening around town in the business community. And while you're at it, you can also go ahead and sign up for the print edition. For $35 a year, you can get that delivered to your home or office.
Terrific, Michelle. Thank you so much for the time, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Chris.